You are unmuted.
Perfect, thanks. I'm Heather Staten, and I'm the Executive Director of Thrive Hood River. And I wanted to comment on the ag tech proposal for the Barrett property that the community college will be presenting this evening. When the Parks District bought Barrett, it didn't do its due diligence to understand the legal uses of the property. In fact, the district ignored the judgment of Oregon's Department of Land Conservation and Development and Department of Ag, who both determined that a community park would not be allowed. 15 years later, and multiple expensive attempts to get a land use permit for a park, the district is still struggling to find a use for the property. Tonight's ag tech proposal is the latest example. Do what you didn't do in 2006. Try to understand the land use laws in play. They've become even more restrictive on high-value farmland like Barrett since you purchased the property. According to Hood River zoning code, public and private schools and colleges are prohibited on high-value EFU. Community centers are prohibited on high-value EFU. Private and public parks are prohibited. Do not imagine that the land use laws will get changed just for this project. The Parks District rolled the dice on that bet in 2006, and it hasn't worked out. The public expects you to spend our money wisely, not continue to throw good money after bad in an attempt to turn around this problem purchase. Your last attempt at getting a permit for Barrett cost the district over $100,000 in attorney and consultant fees. Now you're expending staff time in pursuit of a project that really has no connection to your mission. Your mission is to provide recreational opportunities, not education or job training. Ag tech education is a good thing, but it's not your job. This might be a proposal with a lot of merit, just not at this location. I'd really encourage the community college and school district to consider locating at the experiment station where education is a permitted use. Since the ag tech proposal is aimed at a sustainable future for agriculture, it should respect Oregon's unique land use system that preserves farmland for farming. Finally, the district doesn't have unlimited funds, and the public need for parks facilities continues to grow. After 15 years, it's time to pull the plug, sell Barrett, and reinvest the money in a property and project that will truly provide a recreation benefit for our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. Is there anyone else?
Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? I'm looking in the comments at the attendees, and I do not see any other hands. Okay. So I'm promoting Dan, the panelist, right now, and there are two other people here. Yesenia, promote panelist, and Brian. I think Dan's doing the majority of the talking, but Yesenia and Brian are both here as well. So I will switch over to this other PowerPoint here. I know I mentioned this before. The city has an IT guy that does all this for them, and I'm trying to do it all myself. But got it. Okay. So looks like you can see Dan's presentation on the screen. Dan, do you want me to share your slideshow that you sent me, or would you like to share it yourself? Hello, Dan. Oh, there you go. Hi, Dan.
Mark.
There it is.
Okay, great. Mark, since you have the screens up, the slides up already, and rather than test my limited abilities with technology, why don't we go ahead and maintain that? We would ask you to move through the slides then. And actually, I am going to ask Brian and especially Yesenia to give their perspectives on this. Brian Shortt, formerly chair of the Board of Hood River, and then Yesenia Sanchez of Old Parkdale Farms Incorporated. And I would like to perhaps just preface this by saying what we are not looking at doing on Barrett, and that is building some school, which it seemed to be an implication that we were talking about a physical construction. What we're doing is talking about keeping it in agriculture, putting it into agricultural production with a focus on students learning about agriculture. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian And then Brian will turn it over to Yesenia. I will weigh in at slide 11 to talk about the college's discussions with the school district. So Brian, Yesenia, Brian, go ahead. If you're there. Brian, can you hear us?
He's muted. You're
Okay.
muted, Brian.
There you go. How's that?
Hey, there he is.
Yeah.
All right. The Zoom meeting has taken over my whole computer, so I don't have my notes. So I don't know if there's a way to make this smaller or if it just takes up the whole screen.
If
Brian,
you press
double-
the ESC button, your
Yep.
escape button,
Ah.
Brian.
Got it. I knew there'd be something simple about all this. All right. Okay. I'm almost there.
Brian Shortt.
Well, yeah, just as an introduction. So my name is Brian Shortt. My wife and I own Short Supply. We've been around the gorge for over 30 years. I was a port commissioner for 8 years. And that's really where this conversation for us gets started. But first I want to say thank you to Nan Notaboom and Mark Hickok for the meeting that we had in November, just to open the door of conversation. And so I want the rest of the board to kind of hear how we came to where we are today in a couple of minutes. And it really started with the Port of Hood River trying to figure out strategically what it could participate in this community in a meaningful way. And Lot 1, which is a 9-acre waterfront parcel, was sitting vacant. And I had sitting next to me on the board, Fred Duckwall, of course, who's president of Duckwall Pooley. I was actively involved with the STEM program at the high school and watching the dynamics of STEM just capture the K-12 education system. The Gorge Technology Alliance, of course, has now grown to over 100 individual companies and members. And it just seemed to be this sort of synergy of, well, what if you could bring agriculture together with technology and education, and the port had a role in this at some point in the future? Well, this was 3 or 4 years ago. The leadership wasn't strong enough to see this vision, to hold the pieces together and make it move. In early November, I had a wealthy philanthropist in our store, and I brought this vision up of a ag tech corridor, and he said, "How can I help?" And that's when I gave Mark a call and said, "I'd like to sit down with you and Nan and talk a little bit. And if you'll open the door, I will start to put together, with lots of support, an organization that now accounts to 18 individuals that represent your entire education system in Hood River County, K through 12, the community college, and OSU, reaching out to the Technology Alliance to ask them how they felt that their current levels of technology could be applied to agriculture. And then, of course, reaching out to people that I knew in the agriculture business themselves to say, let's get more specific about your needs and how can technology and education help move this along. So while Lot 1 on the waterfront got lost, the concept stayed with me. As I mentioned, we've got support from agriculture, and we're looking at labor and efficiencies to farm practices and the pressures that small farms are dealing with. The school curriculum, and Dan's going to speak to that in a moment, how quickly the superintendent, who characterized it accurately, he said, agriculture is the cornerstone of Hood River County. And they got together with the college, which is what Dan will talk about. And then we'll talk about this Indian Creek Ag Education Technology Corridor and how it fits within the exclusive farm use criteria. And I'll get into that a little bit more as we move through this slideshow of yours. So Yesenia, you want to begin the introductions of stakeholders and where we are with the agriculture community.
Sure, just a sound check before I get going.
Good.
Good, okay. So my name's Yesenia Sanchez Oates. Real quick, my introduction. My husband and I own Old Parkdale Farms. We're a family farm growing pears and cherries in Hood River County. My husband's a 3rd-generation pear farmer, and now we're working on the 4th generation, who little Corbin Oates was born in November. So kind of as all of this got going and I got involved, and so really I've kind of put more energy into this in the past couple weeks. So really excited about it. Before I transitioned to farming full-time, I was a business development executive for In Situ, working on projects from Jakarta to Madrid. I've been all over the world, and I know there's nothing more special than this community. I'm now on the board of the Hood River County Education Foundation. So I'll get into this. If you could go back to the first or the second slide, please. So real quick, these 2 images here are images that we saw during the beginning of this pandemic. And I wanted to include this in here because I think if there's something that's really freshly, hopefully on everyone's minds, and hopefully everyone really understands the value of farming, the food supply chain, of knowing where food comes from and connecting to farms. I think that's one of the key pieces of this project that is most important to me. I'm excited to share this concept with you. The sustainability of family farms in our area is really, really important to me for so many reasons. One of the biggest reasons is I want to make sure that my 4th-generation family farmer is going to have a sustainable future and a healthy community to live in the future. My experience in the tech world has shown me that there's a lot of value in connecting that talent that we have, that tech talent that we have here in the Gorge, with the cornerstone of our community, which is this agriculture industry. So this project is the convergence of agriculture, technology, and education in the Columbia Gorge. And before I go through all of the slides, I want to ask if you've had a chance to zoom through the slides. Otherwise, I can really quickly hit all of the key points from my perspective before we take questions. So yes to zooming through the slides, or just skipping.
I haven't seen the slides.
Okay, I will happily go through all of it very fast. So again, agriculture, technology, education, it's all part of the community. We need to really kind of keep that in mind as we think about this, or about this project. So next slide, please. So I'm laying out quickly the current ag ecosystem, which includes our valley farmers of farming all different kinds of produce, from mostly pears and apples, cherries in this area, grapes, vegetables, flowers, lots of different produce is delivered to all over the world, but to our community, of course. So farm ag ecosystem includes fertilizer, chemical suppliers, beekeepers, irrigation supplies. It's tied through so many parts of our community. We're connected to the Oregon Department of Agriculture, the Oregon State University. We are working with the Oregon State Extension Service. So there's so many different pieces that work together to make agriculture work in our area, but there is a disconnect between the current ag ecosystem and the tech and education ecosystems. There are some connections, of course, but those can be strengthened and really solidified in order to bring more value to agriculture. Next slide. So when I started thinking about this project, and I got really excited about the potential to bring more value to farmers in this area, I started by thinking about all the challenges that family farms in our area specifically are facing. And some of those key challenges are the rising cost of farming, market challenges, so declining or stagnant farm incomes, the rising cost of farmland. Farming succession is difficult around here and in many places, and modernizing and improving our farm practices. Next slide. So those were our some of the near-term challenges, and the long-term we're also facing climate change, rising labor costs, global competition. There's so many different issues that we're facing. And actually, Mike wrote an article, a really great article, like a couple weeks ago in the Columbia Gorge News. If you read that, you'll get a really good explanation of some of those challenges that we're facing. But those are the long-term, some of the long-term challenges. Next slide. So how can this project help farmers in the near term? So one of the proposals is an open source innovation model, which would be helping to build innovation on innovation to make these innovations available and accessible to family farms. There's a lot of different innovation going on across the world, across different tech areas, but a lot of it is not accessible to family farms. Key point here is creating a rural-urban bridge and connecting the community and visitors to our area to agriculture, and to basically help bridge that divide that we have. There's a lot of people that come to our area and people within our own community. I don't know how many times I have discussions with local people that don't truly understand how ag works around their own neighborhoods. And then opportunities for immediate value. Again, I won't go into a lot of those details, but there are opportunities to create immediate value right away for small family farms around here. Next slide. The ag tech project wish list. So again, there's just more value that I think a project like this could bring to agriculture. This is just some ideas from myself and other growers of projects that we would like to see happen at or in coordination with this project. Basically using UGVs, UAVs, incorporating artificial intelligence and automation to help solve some of these ag issues and ag problems that we have. Next slide. So how can this project help farmers in the long term? So creating a pipeline of students that is focused on agricultural and tech careers that will basically help have a better labor force for the future. And I'll kind of skip through that because I think Dan's going to speak to that. But there's so many long-term benefits, and one of the biggest long-term community benefits that I see is, again, connecting the community to agriculture to foster a better understanding and a better relationship to agriculture and how it is a key part of our community. Next slide. So how can this ag tech be different? Key point here is it must be developed with farmer or ag community and community needs as a foundation, and that is what this group is trying to do. It must have the agility of a startup and be results driven, and so far what I can tell is this is moving very quickly, and that's really fantastic because that's the agility of a startup, and it's good news so far. The structure of the project has to really have that cornerstone collaboration, ag, tech, and education. Next slide. Tying it together. So I will transition over to Dan to show one of the opportunities that is being explored right now, and then I'll take the reins back.
Thank you, Yesenia. Am I back on?
Yes,
Okay, great.
you are.
So really, the slide that you see before you captures some of the key points of the discussions we've had so far. We've met, we being Columbia Gorge Community College, our instructional team, meeting with their counterparts at the school district, Hood River Valley High School. One key meeting occurred with those players on January 6th. So Superintendent Polkinghorn, Columba Jones is the principal at the high school there. Josh Robbins, the vice principal, supervising science and CTE. Kate Worster, College and Career Readiness. From the college perspective, our Vice President of Instruction, Jarrett Gilbert. Gerardo Cifuentes is our Vice President of Student Services, and Mary Kramer is our Dean of Career Tech Education. We do not have an agricultural program at Columbia Gorge Community College. We need to do that. We are in the middle of one of the premier agricultural sectors, frankly, of North America. Look at the variety of crops right here in the Columbia Gorge, high value crops, traditional crops, going farther east into wheat and other things. So it's really been a priority for us, and this opportunity to have an outdoor learning lab so close to the high school and so close to the college is something that we would love to see occur. It's not the only option out there, obviously. Our focus is on developing the program, doing the things that Yesenia has been talking about, the points that you see on this slide here, offering high school students an opportunity to earn early college credit, talking about sustainable practices, farm management, succession planning, forestry, sciences, environmental studies. We have a well-established UAS, UAB training program at the college. There is no good test site to offer students a hands-on site around our campus in Hood River. So this would be an opportunity for that, in conjunction with the applied technologies that students would be learning, bringing UAS and UAB to bear in terms of remote analysis of soil content, moisture, plantings, things of that nature, things that could be done on this parcel. Again, it's not the only parcel, but one thing I do want to emphasize is that we would be placing Barrett into agricultural production. We're talking not about building a facility there. The facilities already exist, the high school and the college campus itself. It's about farming, but about teaching students to farm. So farming is going to occur, and the people who are going to be doing the farming are the students themselves and their instructors, in concert with the farm community. And that's the other big point that I really want to focus on here. This is not going to be something developed in a vacuum in academia. Everything that we do at the community college in terms of career tech is driven by industry. Our renewable energy technology program, guided very, very closely by industry partners in the field, our nursing program, and we see this in the same light. This is not something where the educators get together and put together a curriculum and then send it out to the world. This is something where the agricultural community, in this case, comes to the table and helps define and develop that curricula. That's how we've always done things in the past, and it's certainly how we would approach something like this. The land use issue, I know, is sensitive. I've been around the area a long time myself, going on over 50 years now, and I understand the sensitivity. Going forward, we would need to find some way to make this a win-win. We realize that there are resources committed to Barrett. We realize that the Park District has a recreation focus. The college has an education focus. The high school does too. And then we have the agricultural focus underlying all of this. How do we bring those things together, and how do we move forward and make this really a win-win-win for the different parties involved? That's probably my spiel, and I'm going to turn it back over to Yesenia.
Thanks, Dan. So one of the locations that we have talked about as a place that could be a host for this idea, this concept, is the place that was formerly proposed to be Barrett Park. So we've thought through some of the pros and cons at a high level. This space connects the high school, the community college, so it'd be easy access for students to come to this ag space. I call it ag tech space. It is ESU zoned with allowable uses for agriculture and airfield. The Hood River it's very close to the Hood River population. So if we do look for an alternative place, we'd be trying to find something close to town so that we could have participation from others, not just people in the Upper Valley in the ag or downtown, so that we could have more involvement from the community and from that tech talent that is really critical to this ag tech idea. And really important, again, is that rural urban bridge. Next slide. Again, there are cons, and this is just preliminary. I'm sure the list goes on both the pros and the cons. We are just asking for an opportunity to fully review all of them. So although this project is agricultural focused, the educational and tech elements in the traditional sense may not meet what is traditionally thought of as EFU land, or even if we looked at something that's not EFU and then we tried to do farming on it, we would kind of be caught in the middle of anything, because really this is something new. So farming is taking a different shape in the future. I will skip to the next slide, please. Go through lots of different points here. I'll hit the high points. So one of the positives of this idea is the Indian Creek Trail. So I think Dan had a few points to add here.
Yes, thank you, Yesenia. So currently the Indian Creek Trail terminates just immediately south of the college campus. It's actually on the edge of property owned by Providence Hood River Memorial Hospital. As you probably know, there is a private parcel immediately to the south of that before the trail picks up again at Indian Creek, at Broken T Drive, rather. Part of the vision here, and I know there are certainly challenges, there are certainly unanswered questions, but part of the vision would be to connect Indian Creek Trail, bring it all the way through from the high school, from the Ag Tech parcel, Barrett, if you prefer to call it that, and moving north all the way through to the college campus. It's a vision that I've worked on for the better part of 10 years, focusing on what I've called the Indian Creek Corridor, the Greenway around the college campus. But this would be really a way to focus community energy on making that happen. We could do, if we could develop a shared vision that brings together the different elements that we're talking about here, including Barrett, the high school, the college, Indian Creek Trail. There are so many promising facets that we can bring to bear. We could develop a community campaign that I think would be greater than all of the individual things that we're talking about now. You develop a vision and you go from there, and the sky's the limit. So yes, indeed, completing that trail, I would love to see that happen. Right now it ends, as I mentioned, on the college campus. We have some problems because of that. You've got some illicit camping that takes place down there. And then you simply don't have the joy and the pleasure and the opportunity to follow the trail to the south and complete that vision of making this trail a reality. So enough from me, back over to Yesenia.
Okay, am I muted? Okay, so this.
No, we can hear you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So there's a few slides here that show ideas of different concepts that are different similar projects that have happened in other places around the country. Again, this is developing and is something really broader than this, but some of the, I guess, for recreation's role, again, would be having this site as something that could host recreation. Like I think Dan covered the trail that would go around, basically an opportunity to bridge the community in this space. In the future, potentially, again, with coordination with other organizations in the area. This could potentially host the farmers market to sell the produce that comes off of it or is produced on this property. Let's see. I didn't, Dan or Brian, if you have anything else to add in this one, from this one.
Well, there were three questions that are pretty prominent. I think one is the EFU question. You know, does EFU allow this type of use on the property? You know, why the pace? Why is this group moving so fast? And how much will this cost parks? What kind of impact is this going to be in the parks budget? So let me address EFU. First, of the 18 people that are involved, we do not have a land use specialist. And Director Cavallari suggested I talk to Cindy Walbridge, who, you know, prior to becoming, you know, the city planner, was also a county planner. Cindy, in her wisdom, introduced me to Jim Johnson, who's the Oregon Department of Agriculture Farm Land Use Planning Specialist, who's been in that position for 25 years. He's also a past Gorge Commission planner, a Wasco County planner. He was the Farm Forest Specialist for Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development. So this is a guy with a substantial background. We had a brief conversation earlier today, and then we sent him this PowerPoint presentation to kind of begin the conversation to say, of the vision ideas that we've presented so far, how do we stay inside the EFU designation? And he's offered to help us become a navigator to that issue. So I don't have an answer for you. We don't have an answer as a group for you, but we are heading down that path. He also, incidentally, Mike, he said to say hi. Apparently he's got a background with you. And I said, all right, well, I'll pass that along. He also introduced Hillary Foote, who replaced him as the Land Conservation Development Director, who is a farm and forest specialist. And so I'll get a hold of her tomorrow. So we'll have these two individuals helping guide us in this EFU discussion on this property and the narrative that we put together in this PowerPoint presentation. The second question, why the pace? Well, part of it has been the enthusiasm of these 18 people. And unfortunately, the meeting schedule of the group and the meeting session of the Parks Department board meetings and a criteria to get on the county's prioritization list didn't jive very well. And so that presentation was made to the county's working group, and currently this project is listed as number 5, acknowledging that there are questions out there for us to solve. I've talked to Representative Williams and Thompson, and they like the concept and have encouraged us to continue moving forward. I'm hoping that we can get enough questions answered that we could actually make a grant application for phase 1 and the second part, which is a sustainable grant application. So how do we take this property and work it into a sustainable operation so that it can continue to support itself? How much will this cost parks? Well, at this point, having your parks director and periodic meetings with the park board is going to be our only ask. Everyone agrees in these meetings that we have last 60 minutes. So these 18 people are well prepared when they sit down, and that 60-minute is one of the most productive meetings I've sat in on. What we need from you is we need your support. We need your support to continue moving this vision along, solve questions, gain our state and federal representatives' endorsement, and apply for state and federal assistance. I think that's kind of my piece without preempting any kind of questions that you've got. I noticed that we're, hang on a second here. I wanted to see where we were in our timing. We are 23 minutes into a 20-minute offering. So I think as a courtesy, we should probably back ourselves up a little bit and Director Notaboom or Mark, maybe this meeting needs to go back to you and tell us how you want us to answer questions and what your thoughts might be as a board.
Brian, you did say you addressed, I think, 2 of your 3 questions. The cost to us, could you talk about that?
Well, we have no specific financial requests because of the characterization of all the people that are participating. They're working on their own, out of their own budgets, the school's budgets, the college budget, the university budgets. The people that are involved in agriculture are essentially donating their time. Technology people, you know, they want to know where we're going with this so they can start looking at how they can apply their resources and begin to participate with us. So there's no financial ask that I can see on the near term from the parks. There's other than your support and putting this piece of property, you know, inside this this vision as a part of the piece, part of the exercise we'll go through.
Mike, comes to me.
One last comment. Hopefully, I'm just trying to get this in real quick. So this concept is, I think, independent of any piece of land. I think it's something that's so important to our community and so important to agriculture. Innovation for the future is the way, and really bringing the community together is the important part for me. So that's just the key piece that I have. Hopefully there is a place, and maybe this Barrett parcel is the right place, and there's many reasons why I think it's a potential location that would be fantastic. Looking at what the Hood River County's EFU policy is EFU is meant to help foster existing and future farm practices, and I think those future farm practices are what would be coming out of this concept. So yeah, that is all I have. Thank you.
And I think Mike has a hand up. Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, I'd like to enter in on this conversation a little. First of all, my first impression is it's a very interesting idea. The one thing I would say is please don't refer to this parcel as EFU. It's not EFU, it's high value farmland. The criteria for what you can do there are very, very different. It's probably not an allowed use what you are proposing. And because the Parks District has already spent $100,000 fighting land use battles, I really don't think that we want to, as a Parks District, enter into this again and have another bill for another $100,000 to try to put something in that's really not an appropriate use in the zone. So that's really the first thing, and that is that's a legal thing. Also, I don't believe it would meet the requirements of 215-296, which you should study. Because of what will be going on there. So that's another concern. The other concern is if you really, this group really wants to do it, I would suggest that we put the property on the market and they purchase it. And to say that really no cost from the Parks District, we are putting a piece of property on the in the mix that's worth $1 million, or we've spent $1 million on as a Parks District over the years. So we've got $1 million tied up there, and we really ought to be selling it. We're a very small, underfunded Parks District, and we really can't afford to keep that parcel, especially when our primary mission is the pool. We do not have an education mission. And I just really question whether it's the appropriate thing for us, because we are not, we're not an education district. Now, maybe we could get the people to vote us in as an education district, but my recommendation would be is we put it on the market and the group can buy it, and then they can try to shoehorn in something in there that may not be an appropriate land use and try to pay to have it done. The other thing I'm very curious about is why the Hood River Growers Shipper Organization is not involved with Columbia Gorge Fruit Growers, which represents 300 people. And if it's really going to be a group that is involved with agriculture, they should be definitely included. And the one question I would ask the group is there anything that is being done here or proposed that is not already being seriously researched in the Northwest at this moment? And I think there's a really robust research going on in all these areas. So it's really a question to me of why they think that this small group in Hood River would all of a sudden be able to advance ahead of the hundreds of groups that are already working on these things. So those are my first impressions.
So I guess I have a bit of a different opinion. I am super impressed with this proposal, and I am certainly really excited about any opportunities to use, to share and collaborate on park land for the purpose of education in particular. That said, I totally hear Mike's comments and understand all the rules around the land, and do encourage, would agree with all of that, that we shouldn't be spending any more money trying to figure out whether we can use this land for various things or not. But I think what I heard this group proposing is that we just put in our support for the idea and put in the possibility that should the group invest further, that this land could be one of the possible options for this site. And if that's the case, and we're not spending any money further on our own legal ramifications in terms of figuring out what can and can't be done, then I would support it as being in the mix of one of the possibilities of a future site for this project.
One thing I'd like to add, I get what you said about the innovation thing, and I totally get the land use thing. If we can't do it, we can't do it. Well, two things I'd like to add. I don't favor us paying to find out if this can work or there or not. Somebody else would have to pay for that. And second, one of the things that we haven't really talked about, and this doesn't really have anything to do with Barrett Park, is when Tony Guista was describing the help that he needs and the employees he's looking for and the labor that we're lacking, he can't necessarily afford to hire someone with a bachelor's degree from OSU. He needs someone with maybe a little less, that he can afford, maybe with an associate's degree or a certificate, and that this might be a way to get that to fit that niche of employee. So that's just two little things. Anna, I think you were going to go next.
Yes, I'd be happy to chime in here. I am really impressed with the presentation. I really think it's an amazing idea, and it's something that I want to support. But when we discussed this at our meeting last month, I think I voiced some of the same concerns Mike brought up and that Heather stated at the beginning of, I am concerned that our mission isn't education. While everyone is in support of that, of course, I think that we do need to really make sure that, I think this could be a really incredible program, but I think that we really do need to make sure that it's even a viable land use option at Barrett. And I appreciate, Yesenia, what you said too, of like this idea and this concept isn't married to the Barrett location. It's something that could happen somewhere else in this community, and I think that would be incredible. I also know, like I was pulling up Article 3 of the Hood River County Land Use Code, and pages 8 and 9, and Brian, and I'm happy to send this to you. It does say that, community centers are prohibited uses, schools are prohibited uses, public parks are prohibited uses on high value EFU zoned property. So I think that it's great that you have some good contacts of people that we could talk to find out if it is a viable use. But I also think, we do have a lot of money already tied up into this property, and we have a lot of other projects and obligations as an entity that we need to be addressing, which is our pool and, acquisition and development of community parks on property where that's actually viable. I love the idea, Dan. I'd love to see, our community college have a good, strong ag program. It's kind of surprising that we don't. And I'm definitely in support of the concept, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% convinced that how parks can really help with this. But I'm happy to keep the conversation going, and if you guys can give us the documentation that shows it's a viable use here and present that to us from a land use and a legal standpoint, I would be open to it more so from the parks perspective.
Glenna, your microphone's not on if you're talking.
Unmute. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
So I think it was a great presentation and a wonderful idea. And I think it's great that we could be interested in the education of our community. However, I have to agree with Mike McCarthy, and that is that we should put the property up for sale. And if they're interested in this project and have put all that time and effort into it, that possibly they should have to worry about the land use things and that we have already worked through and are finding that it's not possible. And I don't want to spend any more money on that involvement.
Any other questions for the group here?
You know, and Nan, I'd add something to this, that there's a lot of opportunities in the valley with cooperators, and that's how OSU does it. Is there's a number of cooperating growers that already have these things going on that they cooperate, and there's a lot of people are quite willing to cooperate on any educational activities and have interns and so forth. And the one thing I'd add also is that it would cost about $1 million to plant that orchard, another $1 million to get equipment to farm it. And it is a requirement on farmland that you're supposed to be in the business of making a profit. And that is a legal requirement of the land use system also. So if it's funded as a school and it does not have the intent to make a profit, it's also not a valid land use. So, and you can act like I'm really opposed to this idea, and I'm not. I think it ought to go on at the experiment station, and I think you could have hundreds of farms in the valley that would be willing to cooperate and even donate pieces of land for a few young people to grow crops on.
Okay.
I guess I have a question for you, Nan. Are we trying to, I'm confused at what our conversation is. Are we trying to make a decision as to, I guess one is, do they need a decision from us or just a direction? And I'm hearing us kind of mixed in terms of what our direction is. And then it sounds like we're also starting to have a conversation about whether we should or shouldn't sell Barrett Park. And I don't think that's the conversation we're prepared to have today. So I'm just curious as to what's next. You know, how do we wrap up the conversation? What's the goal? What are we expected to give them today?
I mean, I think that they were just testing the level of support, not only for the project, but for even the possibility of Barrett Park being a place for it to be located. A lot of what we've, you know, what we're concerned about can be answered, but I don't think we have those answers yet. Like, is it allowable? How much will it cost? Will they, well, I think they know that we will not pay to find out if it's allowable, because that is one thing I have made clear in our previous meeting, that we won't, you know, we're not going to be the ones to find out what's allowable there. It's got to come from outside this. And they've completely they said yes. And we asked them that tonight, and they said, we're not asking you for any money. But I think it's great for them to hear all this, because I mean, I said, you need to bring this to the board, because we got to get this whole view in here. And I don't know that we need to make a decision, because we don't have all the information yet, and neither do they.
Well, that was part of the presentation too. On slide 19, it says we're not, you know, Brian and Dan and Yesenia aren't asking us for a decision tonight. They're just asking, you know, for the gift of time. That's what your slide says. You know, to give you guys an opportunity to do the due diligence. Is that correct, Brian and Dan and Yesenia?
Yes.
Yes, that is. And I think a follow-up question to that might be, how much time could you give us? We know that you're under constraints. We know that your resources are tied up in that parcel, and we don't want to drag that out.
So Dan, what do you mean about how much time we can give you? Do you mean before we sell that property to someone else?
Yeah. Would you feel comfortable giving us a few months to explore this and to answer the issues that Director McCarthy brings up are very valid. The college is no more interested in taking on a headache. We are looking at solutions, and we're intrigued by this. We'd like to explore it. We'd like to have answers coming forward. At the end of the day, it would be good to come forward with a project that would have the entire community behind it, so that you don't have a legal battle. We don't want that. We don't want to go there.
And I also, maybe the vision, we've talked about this, like, what is it? I don't think that's been clear, because it is not a school. It is not a park. It is not a building. I think that one slide was a little bit misleading. If anything, we talked about plots being assigned to certain classes or grades. And so the footprint of it is, I don't think that we have a good, clear picture of that, what that might be.
One of our next steps is to have it to basically focus more on the ag community. So Mike brings up a good point, including Columbia Gorge fruit growers, and gathering more input from the agriculture community to define what this would look like to better serve them.
And one takeaway from the preliminary meetings is that the ag community is wildly enthusiastic about this, more so than anybody. Now I didn't talk to every single person in the ag community, and maybe the group that Mike saying we need to talk to them, maybe they'll feel differently. But what we've heard so far has been them being very excited and very supportive. And of course, they don't care where it is. They just like the idea, the concept.
Well, they said we don't have to make a decision tonight.
No.
And I certainly would be willing to give them 3 to 6 months to decide what they can do.
Well,
as long as it's not going to cost us a lot.
I'm definitely in support of the idea of it. I think that, as a board, our conversation about what we're going to do with Barrett Park needs to happen in executive session, because that's a real estate, real estate transactions topic. But I guess, your ask is a year or less to let you guys do your due diligence. And I guess what I would propose is, please come back to us when you have an idea of how much time you need to vet this property as a viable location for your project here. And if it does look like a viable, you've done your due diligence, you can find that it's an allowable use. And because I thought it was super interesting too, Yesenia, that you brought up the point of, well, you kind of need EFU property to do this on, because you're going to be doing agricultural things. There is a distinction between high value EFU and EFU, and that's important to note too. But I would ask that you come back with a proposal and let us know, this is if it's viable or not, and let us know how much time you need to get that dialed in. And then, that gives us a little bit more information to make a decision on as to what our level of support can be.
I like that approach. I think that is very logical, and I think it's something that all parties would need to address very quickly here. Can high value support this or not? If the indication is that it cannot, we don't want to get into a fight. There are other options. We don't need to go there. If there is a definition that shows that it can work, then I think the next step would be to ensure that we have community support from all parties so that we don't get into a challenge down the road and we don't get into a long court battle over this. Again, that's not the route that we want to go down.
Well, and that's just one piece that, I mean, I appreciate that you guys really have a big project going on. That's just one piece of the puzzle. Like Mike brought up, I mean, you're still going to need, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in actual crops and, you know, equipment. And I loved the idea too of having a farm stand there, which is an allowable use. It looks like in the zoning code, you can have a farm stand, but you know, it would be, I could see the potential there. It could be really awesome, but you know, it would be helpful to know from your perspective of would the use be compatible with that property? And if it is, do you have the resources and that community support? Can you get the money to invest in it, to bring it to fruition? Because that will be the other tricky part.
It will be, although those costs would be associated regardless of where we put it.
You're right.
Yeah. To me, the issue of land use planning, and I, the former city councilor who went through a Walmart sighting one time, I am very, very, very sensitive to that one. Let's nail that one down.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you,
Okay,
guys.
any more questions from our group of presenters here, y'all?